Good morning. It's Friday. It's 7:30 in the morning. I have a cup of coffee. Even better, we are joined by the master of mass transit, the boss of buses, the consultant of carrying large amounts of people in a sustainable and environmentally friendly and affordable way to a range of different employment, leisure, and health activities, Dr. Nik Johnson. Um, Hi,
Good
Nick.
morning.
Thanks for joining us at this ungodly hour
Thank
and
you,
listening to
David.
my rambling, waffly intro. Um, Obviously, as Dr. Nick is the mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and as part of that has sort of oversight and responsibility and is doing a lot to improve buses in the area, which is something we quite like because this show is called Coffee, Buses and Politics. So there's you. People have probably seen there's been a raft of announcements of improvements announced for buses across Cambridgeshire. Um, New routes, improvements to routes, new DRT, demand responsive transport zones, and £1 bus fares for under 25s. Rather than listening to me blither on, we'll hand over to the expert. Nick, tell us about buses.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you, David. Good morning to both Stephen and Martin as well, and obviously good morning to anybody else who's listening in. I'm glad that you're pitching me as better than a cup of coffee. I'll take that, David. And you are right. Yes, as the mayor and as part of the Combined Authority Board, but as mayor and sort of chair of that board, the last few days and weeks, in terms of business as usual, despite everything else is going on, has very much been the sort of ongoing evidence of good things that are coming out of the Combined Authority. I mean, it was always one of those things that was within the gift of a Combined Authority, and with the mayor to put a lot of put your shoulder to the wheel in terms of improving public transport, and particularly the long-term ambition to take control, if that's the right phrase, and not slightly loaded, of the bus network, and actually deliver something that people are happy to use, so that people have choice. So it's not just about an absolute dependency on cars, which obviously a lot of people in the area are. It's about kind of the ability to use affordable, reliable, safe and public transport alongside the car and alongside active travel options. So what have we done? Well, the big splash this week, or I don't know if that's the right phrase, or the big roar, is the launch of the card that gives affordable travel, much more affordable travel for those who are under 25. And with a card, anyone under 25 can go to our website. There's been lots of posts about this, and apply for a card. And hopefully within a week or two, in fact, I can hot off the press, I can guarantee the system is working, because I have examples of people saying they've received their emails saying the card is in the post. Well, okay, let's hope it arrives. And then hopefully, I mean, I've also had a direct conversation with several of the bus operators. Obviously, the officers have been talking about they're absolutely making sure that all their the bus operators, the drivers, they're ready. And so when anyone under the age of 25 turns up with a card, they'll know, yep, you will get £1 fare for all bus journeys. So that's the big thing. That was something that was very much promised within the medium-term financial planning of the budgeting of the Combined Authority. But that's on the backdrop of trying to drive ridership, because the buses have been in a very difficult position. And hey, look, I've always been inclusive. I'm going to acknowledge, do something different, hey, maybe today. I'm going to acknowledge that Boris Johnson got something right. I know, okay, right. He talked about, yes, I know, bus back better. He a long time ago, before all the other stuff that, where the wheels literally fell off the bus, he talked about investment in buses. And I mean, there was a lot of money supposedly promised, for up to 3 billion, but obviously with the challenges that has come with the economy, that sort of got whittled down. But what happened was a lot of authorities, ourselves included, put a lot of kind of application and ideas into what we would want to see in terms of improved bus networks. By the time that the money got kind of divvied out, more than half of the authorities didn't actually get any payout. But, eventually we did get a small amount of BSIP funding, but not as much as we would have liked. So we've had to have some real challenges in kind of looking at our budgeting. Let's open declaration. There is now the expectation that on everybody's council tax bill that there is a mayoral precept. Nothing I ever wanted to do, but felt it was necessary to demonstrate the absolute importance, not only to save bus routes back in 2022 when the major local operator pulled out on routes, but also now to move on with that and get a real a network which is open to scrutiny, open to kind of economic, but also social challenges. Buses, running bus networks is not just about how much it is in terms of supplement or value for money. It's about what it does for the society. What it does in terms of giving and challenging rural isolation, opportunities for youngsters to get to education, employment opportunities. But you know what? Also getting out in the evenings. Now, there's a lot of areas of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, are not well served by buses. But hey, within a week, this is what has happened. We're also, good news, up in the villages just north of Cambridgeshire, linking between Peterborough up to Stamford, your Casters, your Wittering. They've been isolated for years and years and years, but with a really clever little bit of local community cooperation working. We're launching a new bus network there, which will improve connectivity. And that's the sort of thing. One of the great things we've had, and this is, credit to all the members of the board of the Combined Authority, all the local councillors across all political parties. When we put out there, we are doing a survey. We're looking. The encouragement we've had in terms of communities getting in contact saying, this is what we want. We can demonstrate there is a whole load of local people who want to use the service. Perfect example is over in East Cambridgeshire, the A1102B, that sort of corridor, often poorly served, but at the same time, lots of kids, lots of wanting to get into college in the morning or get to Addenbrooks. Point is, along with all the other stuff that we've done, we've recently launched 30, not all 30 new routes, but 30 routes and improved routes, which have been across the whole area. Because what we want to do is get the ridership up, get people believing in what is essentially a national bus service. In the same way that you have a national health service, you should think about, we should just have good quality public transport, accessible to all. It's a long, long way to get to the point where probably most of us around this table, virtual room, can think about when I was growing, and I don't know everybody's background, but I grew up in a rural area of Northumberland. And the thing was, at the weekend, what could I do? I could get a bus and I could get it into town. I could go and watch Newcastle United. I could go down to Virgin Records and buy a 7-inch single, and I had connectivity.
You're proper old, Nick. You're really old.
I should probably explain. To our younger viewers, Newcastle United used to be a good football team.
No, that's tough. That's tough. Sorry. So lots of new routes have been announced. Investment in affordable, particularly for under 25, because they're the ones who are probably going to use the services most. And then a whole host of other stuff that we're trying to do around infrastructure. I am not immune to the thing that often the very people who are using these services are the young, are women, and sometimes late at night, poor lighting, the safety of being able to sit there. Add to that improved digital connectivity, and not to kind of exclude the fact that some people don't have access to kind of apps and phones and, that sort of wonderful information that can mean turning up at the bus stop at just the right time. We need a whole different way of thinking. You know what? The best thing is that there is very little pushback about the ambition. How you do it, okay, people may have disagreements about it, but I think across the board, all over the communities and across political parties, I do genuinely believe improvements in the bus network are what people want to see.
I agree. I mean, there's a lot there. I think people do, and I think people, you made the point. This isn't. You can't run a bus network just on which bus routes are profitable in themselves. And okay, there will be some routes that you subsidise, but you probably get the money back in quality of life for people, and in and people be able to get to I don't know, employment and so on. I mean, I think Sorry, go on, Martin.
Yeah, that's the important point for me, and it's quite interesting. You know, one of the articles I've got up on my left is an article about the closure of the IMET Centre in Alconbury Weald.
Oh yeah.
And one of the key things that's mentioned in that article is the fact that it was public transport failures that actually led to that close. I went to visit that site. The chamber got invited to have a look at it, and I went to look at it. It was a fantastic sort of facility, and you could see why a young person would want to learn and train there. But people just couldn't get there, you know, beyond a certain catchment, and that sort of shows, where the journey we've been on in the past with public transport needed to be turned around. You know, this is the first time I mean, I was first elected in 1999. I'm old, right?
Yep.
And this is the first time since then that we've been in a situation where we can actually look forwards to improvements in bus services. And yet, when I was cabinet member for young people, the number one issue that young people were raising about sort of local councils and local government was bus services and the inability to get anywhere. So to me, you know, there's all sorts of good reasons why, this is the right thing to do. And what Nick says is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable, and that sort of precept and everything else. But actually, people are starting to benefit for it, and it's about quality of life, is what David said. Right.
I mean, I think if I can on the precept, there's a thing that, right, we don't want to be putting money on council tax bills. I mean, for lots of reasons, it's not a particularly fair way of taxing and so on. But I think there's the thing that the cash increase is £20. Mm-hmm. The percentage increase looks massive. And so people jumped on that, and actually, anyway. Sorry.
If I just sort of take an angle, we would take a macro angle on this. There's a lot of talk. Obviously, we're in a general election period, and how do we solve all those problems? Maybe we're not going to solve them all this morning, but and a lot of things. It's the economy. It's economy stupid, to quote a famous American politician, and. The idea is, if you can get transport right, that in itself can help drive an economy, can connect people. So going back to that narrative about people who wouldn't necessarily have, who turn down apprenticeship opportunities because they can't get there. People who don't go out in the evening because and spend money in the economy, instead stay at home. They don't drive those local restaurants, those local pubs, because they're thinking, oh no, I can't get there. But then once they get there, I can have more of a drink, because I don't have to, I don't have to be careful about driving home. So there's so many little narratives, within it. But and time again, when we talk about, how do we make our communities sort of thrive, embedding opportunity and choice around transport, be it public transport, be it active travel options and safe and a sort of sense of place where people feel happy to walk to get the bus or to their travel hubs. It has to be the way to go, and it's that shared ownership of all of us, putting in and understanding that to get between A to B and sharing that space and having conversations and just appreciating what's important about connectivity is half of the job, I think.
Yeah, I agree. As a One Nationist, one of the things for me is access to employment. You want to be able to something I talked about last week. Broadening people's horizons, and allowing people access to work in different places. And public transport is absolutely part of that. But it's also important for employers, because the better your public transport is, the better field of applicants you're going to get for jobs and stuff like that. So, it's a pro-business decision as well. And that's the bit where I think people get quite blinkered and look at just one aspect of this, which is, it's really uncomfortable to raise the precept.
Thank you, Martin. I think it's a good point. And I have to say, look, in the 3 and a bit years I've been mayor, I can honestly say the biggest sort of inbox deluge I got was when we were confronted by the decision by a major local operator to pull out a lot of our routes, and it was literally from your very, very old residents who were talking about it's the only way I can ever get to my appointment to the GP, the hospital appointments, or it's the only connectivity I have to get to my relatives, to kind of parents and students. God, did I get students ringing? I mean, good on them. They did a good job of highlighting just how important connectivity and buses into the colleges, into their employment apprenticeships, how important that was. It was just something that absolutely, for me, highlighted the importance of what we have to do working together to kind of give that opportunity, be it, call it one nationism, connectivity, but to drive the economy. That's just unbelievable.
So I met with a lady called Mrs. White, Mrs. Donna White, I think, who collected 1,250 signatures, and that's not like an online petition where you have to click a box. She stood on Market Square, hanging around bus stops, and 1,250 people signed her petition for the 66. That was a difficult time, wasn't it? And I think one of the bus operators, Whippet, kind of pulled their finger out quite a lot and picked up a lot of those services, and had to, and the cost of immediately scaling up that was really difficult because it didn't have enough buses. Had to buy second-hand buses. Some of those buses broke down, and so I think they did a really good job in picking up that slack when that happened.
Stephen, to be fair, all the operators have got it. In the same way, the point I was trying to get to was that dropping off things. Businesses support this. It's about this pro-growth agenda. People, we get lobbying also from businesses saying, I can't get my workers, to come in and do shifts and whatever. And a lot of that's about, what time do the services run to? But that's this thing about designing an improved network. But what you articulated there, that kind of getting a petition by standing in the middle of, the Market Square in St. Neots. It's been, in some ways, for every crisis, there's a solution and an opportunity. And actually, it's driven into the mindset of people in Cambridge and Peterborough, the importance of this service, which is, across the country, with the exception of London, places like Reading, which never deregulated its buses, and in other areas, somewhere like Cornwall, where they have for a long time been doing a lot of investment into their bus net. Ridership in those areas is going up. We are now seeing ridership going up. And that's from quite low levels post-COVID. But as we get more people buying into it, and also the hangover effect of any concerns about safety, post-COVID, we want people to realise that it doesn't matter, young or old, whatever part of the country, part of the county, we want to get buses reaching out into there. And sorry, I haven't mentioned the other thing, David, is that we have to show innovation. DRT, I know you're a big advocate for it, and I now understand the concept of it. Obviously trailed in the early days with the Ting experiment, which has been, I think it's been described as landing successfully. But now looking at how that will spread out to Fenland, spread out to East Cambridgeshire, spread out to South Cambs, Huntingdonshire, a little bit further. I am absolutely behind making that work. And it's a new concept. It takes people, but once you get it, once you're able to coordinate with that, and you understand that the nuances of it and making it acceptable and accessible to all, it's another. I want Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to be an exemplar of how you deliver public transport to rural areas, not just in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and of course, the metropolitan areas, but across the United Kingdom. That's what we should be looking at. We should be the best in the business.
So I think that's a really important point there. So we all know that doing buses in rural areas is hard. You haven't got. Sorry, this is going to turn into a bit of a sort of hagiography for demand responsive transport, but it's difficult because it's rural areas, so you don't have the population density, and it's further between stops. It's hard to run traditional bus services, but the for people who don't know, demand Ting, so the Ting covers West Huntingdonshire, just comes into Huntingdon. So if I'm going to go and see a friend in Great Staunton or whatever it is, you basically sort of book a bus, and it's a mini bus, and it takes you, in Huntingdon it comes to the bus station, the train station, and Hinchingbrook. But beyond that, it basically picks you up from any bus stop in the area. but also means if
or
you're in,
outside your house these days.
well, yeah,
Literally,
absolutely.
so it
I mean,
comes to your house now.
yeah, yeah. It's I always think of it in terms of bus
Outside your house, outside people live outside.
because here it doesn't come up exactly where I live, so I go
Yeah.
into the bus station. But say I don't drive, and so it means that I can get to places that otherwise there isn't effectively a bus route. But it also means that if you're in a random village somewhere, if you're in, I don't know, well, let's go for Great Staughton because I go and see a friend there quite often. You can easily get to the hospital, say, or whatever it happens to be. It's not exactly, it's this thing that you have to sort of, book the bus and so on. The concept works really well. I mean, I think
David, and how? I mean, obviously, the important thing it says you could be sharing that journey with other people, though. That's the important thing. Is that as you're moving around,
yeah.
you can share, it's kind of because what you're describing could be perceived. Well, that sounds like a taxi, but but it's more than that. It's why by using clever algorithms, AI is the thing is that it helps sort of understand that you can improve the capacity of a passenger carrying capacity is moving around the area, and it's sort of like it's almost like you're hitching a ride, along with others. And again, it brings that sort of sense of we're doing this together. Not a bad thing.
No, it's great. I'm sorry. No, you're absolutely right. I wasn't explaining brilliantly well because it's a bus without a predefined route, and so the route is made based on what people need at a particular time. And that's really clever. So your role in the proposals. You got. I think there's 3 other DRT areas.
Yeah.
When are they being rolled out? Is it anytime soon, Nick?
So for clarity, all of these have gone out to sort of now options for local operators, and what we've found is again through centre of circumstances, we have a more a playing field where everybody can play. Everybody wants to come here. And in fact, I get regular sort of updates from operators as well as their officers saying there's more people wanting to come to the area because they see that Cambridge and Peterborough want to invest in the bus network. They want to spend money and, they want, and there are people who want to get on buses. So it's a virtuous circle which keeps coming. So sorry, to answer the question, they're going out to tender. They're being sort of, what we don't know is, how many of these routes and what people will be giving up in terms of what they think they can run it from with the element of subsidy, because subsidy has always been part of running bus services. But even back in the 80s when I was picking up my 7-inch single, as you say, there would be some routes that would always make lots of money, but and they're the ones that are still going now and whatever. But the ones that fell away, that needed the subsidy, well, they weren't getting the subsidy because we'd broken the system, we fragmented it. By doing this process, we will be able to kind of balance up the books, and in terms of deliver that sort of narrative where those that need subsidy. Now, how big the subsidies will be, because that's the competition of different operators putting in their bids. But there's real, I mean, this is I can't believe it. This is some of the market, there is then some driving that, because be it smaller or larger operators, they've got to put a package together where they look at how many buses they have to put on, how many drivers, and then also the routes, which we've kind of put out there as what we think is required. So the idea is we'll know towards the end of the summer into the autumn, and then, as you say, we'll hopefully start rolling them out.
Nick, can I ask a question about that? How's that working with the app? Is each, because at the moment I think we've had 2 providers for Ting. We had Stagecoach in the early days who had 1 app, and then we had Vectere. It's pronounced Vectere, isn't it? Not Vectere, which we said for years. And Vectere took the service over when they won the tender, I think, but they had a different app. Will the providers be providing the app, or will there be a central app? Bit
by bit, as I understand it, and I mean the officers would give a more definitive answer here, is the real thing here is the information. It's the user database. And what we have to do within the combined authority is almost like that's the thing that we now need to move into taking over the ownership. And the idea is that, be it through the Ting model, through the Vectari model, and now sort of going towards whatever model we're what we would be looking for is to amalgamating all of them so that they all, doesn't matter if you're in Fenland on DRT or if you're in sort of, there will be geographical kind of constraints with what can be provided, but the actual software and app and IT type stuff driving it, we're going to have to take more kind of understanding and ownership of it, because ultimately, you know, the idea that every time you put it out to tender, you end up getting another app, that is an inconvenience rather than necessarily a problem, but one that once we've now got the, dare I say it, the ambition, the drive and the leadership, and also the ability in-house to kind of drive it forward, we can save a lot of money and sort of go forward and actually make sure that we're delivering the right stuff.
So,
so in other words, there may be a change, Stephen, but what we've got to do is ultimately, it's the whole, we will become the brand. You know, that's also on the whole process that we haven't touched on yet, and I'm more than happy to discuss, is that the expectation we move through either an enhanced partnership or to franchising, which is an argument that still has to be had at board, and we will be discussing between ourselves and all our various representative, and, you know, making the case out through a consultation process with business, with communities, to say what is the best. You know, we're currently moved because we are expected to a sort of an interim enhanced partnership. There's no secret. I have always said I think I favour franchising as a long-term ambition, but that's not without its significant challenges, and we've got to kind of have that discussion in public, not maybe today, but as a part of a 3-month consultation, as long as the board agrees that we should go out to that.
Just on the app, can I just ask one more question on the app?
Yes,
so is there a commercial opportunity then? Because you are pioneering DIT here. It's not DRT. It's not only a trial for Cambridgeshire. It's like one of the big trials for the whole country. So is there a commercial opportunity that if you got the app right, then you could sell that on to other authorities? Or is that something that you're not?
I'm honestly, Stephen, I don't have enough knowledge about the ownership of that thing. All I know is that there's an expectation that we can be a bit more savvy about the longer term implications of us holding the kind of narrative and understanding of the geography and ridership. Business, you know the old adage, don't put politicians and money together. Very bad idea. Just it all runs with the officers, but they know what they're doing. I am absolutely been amazed by the ambition, the professionalism of the officers within the Combined Authority. What they have achieved over the last sort of year is unbelievable. In fact, if I was to go back to the point where we were sort of suddenly confronted by this almost decimation and the announcement by an operator that they would be not providing services, from that moment on, sort of September 22 to this time, where we were and what we were, kind of that cliff edge we were facing, to what we are now driving towards, and I think it's collegiate. I think it's one of that where we're all working together, north, south, east, west. I am so proud of the Combined Authority, so proud of the officers.
Okay, so there's some questions coming through that we should take in a minute. But I remember when you were saying your post bag was really full when basically Stagecoach were going to pull out. I don't think it was just yours. I'm town councillor, and people were saying, God, what's this about? Is this about the buses? Obviously, people use, using the buses to go out sort of further, further north and east in here. And I think the 66, you had to step in to the 66 is a key, sort of key route, Huntingdon, God, Manchester, Buckden, Brampton, down to St. Neots. For people who don't know, St. Neots is a town near Huntingdon.
It's one that's in our 30 routes. Reference number 18: improved frequency with between Huntingdon and St. Neots. It's an interesting point you make about when it blew up. It was like letters were going all over the place, because who's in charge? Who? And the truth is, I was getting stuff, and I was saying, but I'm not in charge. The system is broken.
Yeah.
Deregulation of the buses has broken it, so that where people can just pull out, for whatever reason, they're a business, if they're not, they don't feel that they can run it, or they're making a lot. That's what businesses do. They can make those choices. But that sort of social contract, in the same way, you wouldn't just have, in the analogy of the National Health Service, a GP who was running, essentially primary care. If they suddenly said, we've got so many patients, or we're not, we're just going to pull out. You can't do it. That's how important we should look at a national bus service in terms of compared to that. You don't just pull out. So you have to have a minimum level of service for all, where people can access. And we've got a long way to go. A long way to
Can
go.
can I just say, as somebody that's market driven, I really wouldn't want a national bus service, by the way.
No, okay, all right. Maybe I'm being a bit contentious because I know that sounds, oh God, here comes the socialist. But you know, what I mean is that sort of psyche. You know, you can provide a minimum level of service and an ambition through, you know, public-private partnership or just, you know, whatever. But what the point is, deregulation took apart the contract where services that supported, you know, less viable services in terms of finance fell apart, and that's what we've had ever since the 1980s. Deregulation.
I agree, and for me personally, and part of this is about the fact, and it's recognised that there is basically sort of regional, sub-regional monopolies happening in the bus industry, and in fact, there's a Competitions Authority report from quite a few years ago that basically says it, and nothing's changed since then. So, you know, part of the thing for me about franchising is trying to find an opportunity to break up those little monopolies, because I think they're really unhelpful as well. But can I just push a local thing?
Can I just, before you get my just to say, to the credit of the operators and the way things have changed, they have all sat down together. They have now got in Cambridge and Peterborough a bus operators sort of alliance, and their representatives. They work collegiately. They come to the Combined Authority. Combined Authority knows where to go. We've also, you know, linking in with bus user group. So I think there was a danger. Yes, you know, big monopolies never good for any sort of kind of delivery of service. But I think we're showing how to do it, and that's in conjunction with operators as much with our local community. Now,
just to push back on that, Nick, you're right. But these are not. You've got one big operator in the middle of that. And a number of little ones, and you'll know when it's really working when you get another big operator in there, and that to me would be the real sign of success, that things are breaking down.
Or one of those smaller operators, they all get a little bit bigger, and who knows? You know, that's giving them at least the local, you know, operators who are maybe not at the size of the big ones, the go-aheads, the Stagecoach, the Northern, whatever. Was it Arriva? But if local companies get bigger, you know, that's always that'd be great, driving local economy businesses.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize.
I just want to push a local thing. You talked about Ting and demand responsive trials, and one of the things in your announcement is that you want to do something in Finland. Can I just ask, is there a timescale on that? I think you've already answered that actually, but whereabouts is that? Because I would say, as a Whittlesea resident and somebody that's in the middle of writing election literature, it's something that I think is really perfect for Whittlesea to Peterborough routes.
Right.
All sorts of I just want to say that part of the reason is with Whittlesea, as the town has expanded, the bus routes haven't. Yeah. And so there are too many people in Whittlesea that are having to basically, they're forced to drive into the town centre, use up an ever decreasing number of available parking spaces to catch a bus into Peterborough. And if we could do something of a demand responsive scheme in Whittlesea, it solves that problem. Okay,
so with regards to Whittlesea, I'm looking at the thing up here, and just to kind of reiterate, these proposals, these 30 new or improving routes, established routes, these came from local communities. These came from the local councillors, you know, consultations by officers with the local elected representatives across the board, saying, what do your communities want? The one that we came up particularly with Wisbech is improvements to 31 and 33 with later evening journeys to Whittlesea. That's also to cover the Amazon and McCain's employment hotspots. Talk about the wider thing. Now, you talked about DRT. There isn't a proposal as such in terms of the DRT trial to cover Whittlesea, but it's an area that covers more around Chatteris and March and places like Turves, which hasn't actually got any connectivity at all, and out to Maney. So there isn't anything particularly around DRT for Whittlesea at the moment, but there are additional improvements to around that corridor, Chatteris, March, Whittlesea, and then we've also the Peterborough March routes, Chatteris, Ely, Ramsey, and finally the one that I've got a real soft spot for is in Wisbech, the 68. I was harangued, in the past, that there was a potential that was a service that was originally created by I think Money. It was called the Tesco bus. We saved that in the past. We've enhanced it, and now they're going to try and do enhanced days and hours of operation, also including extending the route to Morrison's, and even a consideration of running it on a Saturday. So that's more specific.
I mean, I can say specifically the 31-33 thing and the later evening journeys and the Amazon McCain thing. I can say 100% that's been a local issue for a long time. The fact that if you work outside of normal working hours in Whittlesea, you can't, in Peterborough, and you live in Whittlesea, you can't do it by bus. And that's a really uncomfortable thing. So I can read that straight off from local residents and things I've heard and talked about.
And to the credit of, local representatives, and people, I mean, that was the wonderful thing. I mean, it feels like it's taken too long. I won't be thinking this, but to do it right, to have a kind of what is the level of investment? Where have we been running services that probably were no longer fit for purpose? That we had to kind of think that's too much, and too much subsidy. But we couldn't just pull routes. We had to work out. And I'm glad to hear the feedback from you as a resident of Whittlesea and the voice of Whittlesea. Call it what you will. In terms of from that point of view, we've put a proposal on the table. Are these perfect? These 31s? I'm sure there will be people who will say, "Oh, you can redesign." In fact, we've already from when we actually released it between the gap and then and the final putting it out there, we had some final tweaking. But this is essentially what we're putting out there as a first tranche. And as we go forward, we drive the ridership. Then we'll look for more improvements, and then the whole bigger thing through the move towards enhanced partnership through franchising. Assuming that's the final decision, then we'll have more control, and we will have even more kind of ability to design public transport that works for all.
Yeah, I mean that to me, it's a starting point. Is where it looks to be, and I think that's really helpful. But it's great for me. I can see it, and I presume if DRT works, you'll be looking to expand it anyway.
Yeah. Look, the thing is, right, I would say we're still at base camp. We've got Everest to climb here. We're still at base camp. But the thing is, we've got our boots on and we've got our North Face jackets on and we're ready to take on the challenge. But man, there's such a long way to go. Can
I pick up? Very well rehearsed, Nick.
I just thought about that.
We should say that we do not endorse driving buses actually up Mount Everest.
No. I do endorse North Face jackets, though, because I've got about 5 of them. They're the only ones I wear, so good choice.
Can we take this question from John Morris? It takes more than 90 minutes to catch the bus from Huntingdon to Cambridge. I can get there quicker on my pedal cycle. What's the prospects of getting an express bus service from Huntingdon to Cambridge in the foreseeable future?
Do you want me to go for that one?
Yeah. Can you? I mean, or just.
Yes. There's well, first of all, nobody can keep up with. If that's the John Morris I know, the first thing is a man who cycles a lot. That's probably because he's a very good cyclist. But the point is a genuine one about sometimes the routing of Huntingdon to Cambridge, and there is within the proposals a express service between Huntingdon and Cambridge, which, as I understand it, it basically benefits from the detrunking of the old A428. So it would come out of the bus depot, go straight down there, and I think when it gets to about sort of Fenstanton area, it takes a left, and then it joins, rather than joining onto the A14 and potentially getting caught in congestion, it goes in through the sort of Swavesey area. I don't know the exact route, and then joins the bus route, and then benefits from that that express route into the centre of town.
It's worth saying that John. If John can get there in 90 minutes, it doesn't mean everybody else can. That's for certain.
Can I ask a couple of questions of clarification about the new Tiger Pass? Yeah, because I think there's some disinformation floating around, and these are easy to answer. So one, a chap called Barry off of Twitter has said Stagecoach are not participating in this scheme. Only Victoria and Delane are. Is that true?
It's the wrong way round. I don't know where that's come from. And I spoke to the bus guy, also known as Darren Rowe, chief executive for Stagecoach. I spoke to him last night and said, what's going on? He's been very clear, and I've spoken to officers. No, Stagecoach, as the biggest operator, they are absolutely on this. I'm trying to sort of work out Stagecoach's comms situation. They are outsource it elsewhere, as I understand. And so he promised me he would say whatever their any sort of messaging they're getting out of their comms team. Just to be clear, he's reiterated the messaging to his team. I've also spoken to other lead officers at operators. They are putting the message out there that every bus driver will know that if somebody turns up, as they receive their Tiger card over the next week or so, that when they turn up, they should be able to kind of give it, and they will be given a £1 fare. I am in some way. I absolutely expect there'll be a hiccup along the way. There's a potential that somebody said, "Well, I've not been told about that." But so we are reliant on the operators, but they've all signed up with it. There's two operators, and it's the other way around. Vectare, they're the ones that haven't signed up.
Do you know about? There's another one on here, A to B Travel Group. Are they included in the scheme or not? They are included.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. One more question. Somebody else has asked this information. Is this scheme only for the bus services you're saving, or is it for all of the buses? Well, I think you've answered that already.
It's for all of them.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Can I just go on to something else? So onto enhanced bus partnership and franchising and so on. Yeah. Because we've got the what you call it, the bus operators forum, and all of the bus companies suddenly seem to be much more interested in working together and being cooperative. A cynic might say that the fact that somebody who's sort of in charge of buses, is talking about franchising. I don't think that's the music that the Undertaker used to come into in WWF.
I was a bit scared for a moment.
Yeah,
it's my front door. Sorry.
I think that says more about you, Martin, than I never ever knew about you.
I suppose what I'm getting at is, like, where do you see, or what's the timetable between going for enhanced bus partnership or franchising? How do you see that developing? And then a specific question, which is, if I may, if you have an enhanced bus partnership, can you cross-subsidize between routes, or is that something you can only do with franchises?
All right. So this is the best I can do, and then and I apologize if I say anything which, if people want to query, then I might have to get officers to respond. So we were the recipient, not of as much as we would like, but we did get some. There was 2 tranches of funding: BSIP, Bus Service Improvement Plan, again from central government. There was a big tranche which we were one of the. As I say, we didn't get anything for that, but we got a smaller amount, and there was an expectation. The way that we spend that money, the central government edict was, to do this, you have to demonstrate that you are either in an enhanced partnership, i.e. working well with operators and a new kind of relationship, moving things forward, or in a franchise. Now, we're not in a franchising situation, so more or less everybody is across the country. Bus operators are working with local authorities to become enhanced partnerships. So that we have declared, we're moving in an interim enhanced partnership. We had the conversations with Department of Transport so that we could demonstrate good governance and expenditure of money given to us to improve bus services. The reason we say it's an interim was simply because we're on a journey. And it's a journey that has been very clearly articulated by myself, even before I became elected as mayor, as an ambition. I think we will be best served by franchising, but that's not just completely within my gift. It's one that has to be agreed through a consultation process with the community and indeed with members of the board and all other kind of elected and that will be based on the business case that has been submitted now to Grant Thornton, who are auditors, and they are at the point we get no positive news. We wouldn't have submitted it if we didn't think there was every chance that they would come back and give us what is called a sort of letter of kind of you're not mad. This case that you're putting in front of us can stack up, but that case and the kind of expenditure and the over not just the next few years, but over the longer term, that has to be then understood by everyone, and kind of what you're kind of buying into, but also what the benefits are. So I know I'm talking a lot here. There's always a thing. If you keep talking, then it says, "Am I getting the guest?"
You are, so here's the thing with that, Nick. It's let's say you did end up going with an enhanced bus partnership of some sort for whatever reason, and it would be my preference, and this is why this question comes out. If we did end up doing that, would you still be able to have the potential for bus franchising on the back burner just in case that fell over?
So it's an interesting one if you look at actually the general election, because generally the whole idea of moving to franchising has been quite difficult. The case, there's been a lot of steps. You could go back to the narrative of Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester, where in the past big operators have almost pushed back against it. But the narrative is that there's almost like an understanding that franchising does work. And as I'll name drop in here, having spoken to Andy at some length, he's already demonstrating financial benefits already above and beyond the case that they put before the auditors and in terms of the consultation in that area. So I think what you say, there's almost like if the Labour government came in, they would make it easier to do this anyway. There isn't a kind of, it has to be one or the other. It's a kind of choice that's made through local representation, through the process. A combined authority does have within its gift the opportunity to choose franchising as a longer-term option. And I, without going into arguments that I'm sure will be played out many times over the next few months, although there is benefits to an enhanced partnership, the actual bigger benefits of franchising, i.e. more control, the ability to cross-subsidize, the idea to go for things like one, easy amalgamation of one ticketing options, pricing structures, sort of thing that we're already kind of putting on the table, but also the kind of, and this is, I know it sounds daft, but that sort of pride in the bus fleet, the kind of one, again, growing up, some time ago, you say to people, what were the colour of the buses? I remember the buses in the northeast as yellow, and then but people say, well, in Liverpool they were this colour. Around here they'll talk about the eastern regions, that kind of, and the iconic red bus of London. Yeah. Those sorts of kind of understanding and that one colour branding, even if they're organised and supported by different operators, that's an important point about building up a sort of narrative. It's not a national bus service, but it's something that we all, as people in the community, have a lot of pride in. And so that's what our taxes pay for. That is what I like to see, a reliable bus service for all.
I think I agree, but it's also, as well as that, it's also better advertising. Like when you have the bus, the bus, and people aren't thinking as much about whether I'm going to take the stagecoach or the whippet. It's I don't know if they're all going to be black and yellow tiger stripes, which would be pretty cool. I will say would be pretty cool. But something like that. Can we pick up a question from discussion from Andrew Jones? The VIX-based bus stop signs often show incorrect information. The system was transferred from county to combined authority. When will this system be made to work properly?
I know Andrew. I know him well. It's one that is often made as a kind of point. It could be done better. I think it was handed over to us knowing that it wasn't. It's not without its challenges. Ironically, in a world where information is king, I think we could be doing a lot more with that. I'll take that away, Andrew. I have asked about this in terms of the ownership of that kind of information system and how we can use it, but there is currently a disconnect. We might have the system, but then we don't directly link it in with the services. We're not the service providers. It's a sort of it's not ideal, and it can be better. I'll put my hands up to that. I'll take that away. And if Andrew wants to write to me directly, you'll get a proper officer. I'll ask the officers to explain why we've not managed to do that. But as a point within the funding plans going forward into the new year, we did talk about improved bus infrastructure, and some of that was about digital connectivity. So it's a fair criticism, and I will again work on it.
There's a website I really like, bustimes.org. So obviously, if you do use, if you're happy using a phone or whatever, or looking it up on the computer, but it also maps quite a lot of the buses, and that is really, really useful. So we've got all of this, all of the bus improvements sort of coming. I mean, I think it's one of the ones that there's a combination here of a few things which together, and look, people know, we're fans of buses. No great surprise. I'm a big fan of you, Nick. But there's one of the most interesting things in there for me was one line, which was about making I can't remember the route numbers now, but it was that two routes would basically meet, so you could interchange between them. Mm-hmm. And it's the beginning of actually having, rather than a set of bus routes, you have a bus system. This is sort of east to St Ives. I don't know. It's just starting to get that, and then starting to sort of plug in better with trains and so on. Train timetables is particularly good. The sort of, I suppose what I'm getting at is the combined effect. Say, particularly if you're it's now easier to get to work or education because the buses are running a bit better and more reliable, and it's £1, and so on. That I'm really hoping that gets people using the buses more. It's that sort of.
Well, we've got evidence to show there's improvements happening. There are improvements in terms of. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know. It's interesting, and I'm glad it's happening sort of relatively quickly, because if you think where we were not that long ago, when it was like, oh shit, are we still going to have the 66 bus to St Neots?
Okay, well, you're allowed to use that language at this time of the morning, David.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. But you know what I mean. We are we going to have that? Are we going to still have the 66 to going in really not very long to how do we improve the 66, and then copy that across across Cambridge and Peterborough is I'm really happy with it.
Well, as a matter of fact, I think we should have a Route 666 somewhere. By the way, it's something I think we should
go into Whittlesea, I reckon. Can I ask a question? The one thing I'm really disappointed about this Tiger Pass is that you called it a Tiger Pass and not a Magpie Pass, which seems like a massive missed opportunity for you, Nick. Why is it called a Tiger Pass? Is it whole city?
Obviously, Andy has his B network in Manchester. There is obviously an Oyster card so there is something about these are ideas that are above my pay grade, but to be fair, for those who can remember a very enthusiastic candidate who wanted to be the mayor and then suddenly found himself to be the mayor.
He was very young.
Very young. I've aged over the last 3 years. I did talk about the idea, a little bit of branding and the idea of Tiger buses, simply are based a little bit on what you said, David. The idea of, wouldn't it be, an idea if we embraced the history of the Fenland Tigers and those kind of revolutionaries that were kind of taking on the world. The narrative, however, I was always impressed. The idea I gave was the black tiger stripes, reminiscent of the loamy soil of the Fenland, and the red of the kind of Fenland kind of sunsets. It was it was an eye-catching conversation I remember having with Dottie McLeod, about the idea of really kind of making the investment, and the idea that we'd have Fenland buses, not just over Fenland, but over the whole of Cambridgeshire, which would be eye-catching, and they would be kind of drawing the narrative of this is what we talk about investment. I just quite like tigers, which is another thing. In fact, there you are. Hello.
Yay!
So, because a tiger sits on my desk all the time. No, it's more just about eye-catching branding. A tiger is a strong brand, and it has links obviously to the Fenland Tigers. Tigers. So
I really like it.
So do you know where the Fen Tigers came from?
I know a little bit about them, but I normally get it more my information from Wikipedia. Do you want to inform me a little bit more, Martin?
The Fen Tigers, a guy called Vermeulen was the guy, a Dutch engineer that came in and drained the Fens, and the opposition. He nicknamed the Fenland people the Fen Tigers because of the opposition that they gave to the draining of the Fens, because of the impact it was going to have on their quality of life, basically. Because the local people made their life out of the Fens, and when it was drained, everything changed, and that's where it comes from. And then we also had the Fen Tiger, Dave Boy Green, as a boxer.
Yeah, well, I do remember Dave Boy Green growing up, getting my Tiger and Scorcher comic, and there was this sort of kind of the sort of thing, World of Sport, and that whole grandstand. Dave Boy Green, when proper, I don't know, I guess there's still proper boxing nowadays, but
not long ago he was a counsellor.
Really? That I didn't know.
He's a proper nice bloke. Is Dave Boy Green? I remember walking around his business in Chatteris quite a few years ago now. But yeah,
I've never met him, but I know he's held in very high esteem, and rightly so. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Nick. Really appreciate it.
Can I just, before we move on, I know you want to move on, David. I just thought, is there anything else the combined authorities do? We talked a lot about buses. Is there anything else we can talk about quickly, or is there anything else that
this is a whole second hour show?
Oh, Martin, give a politician a chance to talk about
it. Or should we do that another time?
I think it would be to do it justice. All I would say, maybe rounding up, I want to give a big shout out to the combined authority. A week ago, we were up in Leeds as Team Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, at a conference which was all about, looking at working with investors about driving inclusive growth for all, and having representation there from Fenland, from Peterborough, from Cambridge City, from Huntingdonshire, from South Cambs, East Cambs. This was all part of a narrative which kind of made me feel not only incredibly proud to be the representative of this area, but also to celebrate what the combined authority has come to. There's no secret, it's been a challenge, and devolution is hard, not just here, but it's been challenging across the whole of the country. But devolution is the big game in town, and I'm lucky enough to have quite regular conversations with other mayors, obviously with Shadow Cabinet, Keir and Angie and Rachel Reeves. And look, general election is here, but what I understand, what Michael Gove was pushing for the area, but in the same way, the Labour Party is, they recognise that money spent locally, or devolved monies, the money that's raised through central taxation, handed to local leaders, local organisations like combined authorities, is spent effectively, be it in skills, be it around transport infrastructure, be it about working with business boards like we do here. And if I was, if you had a guest of someone like Andy Burnham or Steve Rotherham, they would point out that over the last sort of 12 years that they've been running, their combined authorities, the growth in Manchester and in Liverpool, the Northwest, actually outstrips UK PLC. Now, because it's where money is spent well, because when you have local leadership working together, who've got the nuance of those fine tuning about what bus routes work, what investment in local infrastructure works, be that around developing green centres or whatever. It's the only game in town, and I'm really, really looking forward. And no matter which government we have come July, I believe that devolution will help us become a better country. We've got real challenges, but I think the way that we spend the money cleverly by using devolved powers is to the good of us all.
A couple of things there from me. First of all of that I agree with, but secondly, Nick, because we chatted up there, but I was up at UK Reef in Leeds last week as well. And as a proud Cambridgeshire resident, it was fantastic to see the combined authority up there, but also doing a great job up there. It was excellent for me, and it wasn't just the combined authority, as you say. It was reps from all the councils there as well. And I thought you did a great job, actually, really good.
That's appreciated, and it's because people want to work at the combined authority. People want to drive it. We don't just want to be the an improving combined authority. We want to be the best, and I believe we are. We're getting there. Hard work. It's been hard work, but we can do it.
I can start to see the combined authority really coming into its own now. I think it's taken. I think it's taken far too long.
I don't agree.
But I really can see it. And in terms of what you were saying about funding from government and everything else, I would argue that the sooner they can move on to a slightly different model to that, where actually we're in control of some of that ourselves, so that we can make the decisions about where things come.
Single settlements, single settlements. Sorry, that's my daughter's going through there. Local kind of arrangements around, business rates retention. There's if you look at the trailblazer circumstances of what Andy Street, Conservative mayor, did for West Midlands, Andy Burnham did in Northwest, I would be very hopeful of how looking at the ambitions that those areas have as combined authorities for bringing that to Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
Yeah, sorry, I hijacked that, David.
I would welcome an opportunity to come back, but there's, how long have you got? I could say because they, it's in conjunction with its constituent parts. We don't want to, we're not haven't got direct responsibility for social care. We haven't got direct responsibility around housing, but that overarching team, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, working with constituent parts, pulling it all together around the business, the growth, the, caring for the environment, linking in with my big passion. I would love to talk at length about the importance of how driving preventative and public health improvements and, working upstream to kind of save the NHS, making people healthier so that they're not got as much, through clever design of transport, active travel, improving the housing stock so that people aren't using the NHS as much. That's a driving ambition for me.
Usually when we finish the show, Nick, we ask what's your your favorite bus from the last week. Obviously, you have a bit of a bigger purview. So, what's your favorite bus route in Cambridge?
Okay. My favorite bus route is the 18, which is one that I use through my own village. But I tell you what I have learned, and this is an example of how people change. It's very simple. It's the park and ride service. I've lived around the local area for almost 20 years. And for many times I've often, if I've driven into the centre of Cambridge, use, Lions Yard or whatever. And I don't know why I wasn't using the park and ride. And I don't know. It wasn't on my radar. And that service of using the park and ride is a fantastic opportunity to kind of, it's a lot cheaper. And if I can't always get buses directly from town on the 18, then that using park and ride services.
Yeah, the park, and it saves the nightmare of driving in central Cambridge.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't even got another story entirely.
Yeah.
I must admit, I think the park and ride's great, and I never ever drive into Cambridge now. Never.
Yeah.
There's just a couple of things. We wanted to finish up with, Nick. You're very welcome to stay, but obviously we know you're busy. But so if you need to shoot off, do.
I just want to say, I will do, because I'll probably listen in elsewhere. But no, I think this will be. Just want to say thank you for inviting me. For anybody who's listened to it, and to 4 middle-aged men droning on about buses, it must be a killer of a kind of one, But I'm looking, if there's people who have listened in for the first time or have heard stuff that they're not quite clear, I would encourage them to get hold of me via the email mayors.office at the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. There's lots of contacts that can be done through, the website around the Tiger Pass. The more we get in terms of the Combined Authority and the kind of how we can demonstrate that we're working for you, the combined, for the community, then it's what I want to see. And thank you for allowing me to talk so passionately about bus service improvements.
Well, thank you much, and you'll have to come on again for talk about everything else that's going on with the Combined Authority.
Okay, well we'll have to make it a long program then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nick. Bye, mate.
Bye-bye.
I mean, Nick picked up on something that's worth saying. You may notice that this is a very male-dominated show at the moment. As people know, Alex is running for Parliament.
Is she? She should have mentioned, shouldn't she?
Yeah, she is. And just basically fitting her work in around campaigning. She can't do the slot at the moment.
I feel
will
her
be back
pain.
in future. I understand that there's some other people running for different elections. Stephen, I understand you might be running for Parliament.
I am running for Parliament. I'm running very slowly at the moment, but yeah, it was a bit of a shock, wasn't it? And although I always had some intention to do it, it was mainly based on maybe doing it in October or November when everybody predicted it was. So just over a week ago when the announcement came, it was a bit of a shock to me, and I've been trying to put a campaign together ever since, living my best life. But it's a lot of stress up front because you've got to get all your printed stuff out, starting from nowhere, getting a website up, getting 30,000 leaflets printed twice, 2 different drops, getting your signs printed, all that kind of stuff is an enormous amount of work. And if you miss your deadlines, the campaign is really short, especially if you consider the postal votes go out, it's less than a 4-week campaign. And so mobilizing people to get all those leaflets out
I just want to say, Stephen, from a voter perspective, 5 weeks of what we're seeing on the television in the run up to July the 4th doesn't feel very short.
No, and I also feel already there's been a massive buzz, isn't there, over the last week, and I can already feel some fatigue amongst residents. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
I certainly have high levels of fatigue at the moment, which is why I've been a bit quieter this morning.
That's all right. And I understand that, Martin, you might be running for something.
Yeah,
I am there. A vacancy has come up for Whittlesea Town Council and Fenland District Council in what is Whittlesea South Ward, and I have decided to throw my hat in the ring as an independent, which will surprise a few people. But there's a big conscience issue with me. I couldn't stand as a Conservative at the moment. I think the Conservative Party is broken, and it needs to, being blunt about it, it needs to lose this election in order to fix itself again. And for me, the best thing for the country at the moment is for the Conservatives to lose, because I don't think Labour are coming across as bad. I like the fact that Labour are doing a purge of the left. I know others don't. Others don't, but I think it gives people like me who are wary of the left in the same way that I'm wary of the right, who are basically taking over the Conservative Party. It's reassuring to me that effort to keep Labour in the centre ground is going on, and I think so. We'll have a centre ground government while the Conservative Party fixes itself, and I think that's the best thing for the country.
How long since you've been a councillor, Martin?
I stood down in 2014, and so it's 10 years. But I've obviously worked in and around local government, as you guys know, with what I do professionally. So one of the things I hope I can bring. Sorry, I didn't want this to be an election address, but I wasn't expecting this. But one of the things I hope I can bring is to take that knowledge that I've gained of, what does a good council look like, and actually apply it to Fenland and put a bit of drive into Fenland, because I genuinely believe Fenland needs a bit of drive and energy. It just lacks focus, and I want to do that, and I want to do it in a way that benefits Whittlesea.
Fantastic. Are you standing for both town and district as well?
Yeah, I am. I think it makes sense to a certain extent, because I can take those town issues and translate them across to district, and having people sit on both is actually helpful. It's why I quite like triple-hatted councillors as well, and dual-hatted councillors who do district and county, because the transference of issues and works really well.
Brilliant. All the information on the elections, good luck to everyone standing in the elections, but the information on the elections is out there. I'm trying to think if you haven't register to vote, you just Google register to vote and you'll find it. Similarly, for postal votes and proxy votes, if you need them, I'm sure there'll be information around, but please make sure you are set up to vote. I just wanted to talk about one other thing. Actually, I see we've got 115 people. Thank you all for joining. Clearly, we can see that the attraction for this show is Alex and not three beardy middle-aged men. There's an organisation called NALC, which is the National Association of Local Councils, which sort of represents town and parish councils. They put out and does various useful things. They've put out a new guide, what's called the Good Councillors Guide, and it's got one particular line in it that I think is extremely worrying. This is on page 26 of the Good Councillors Guide, the new version on their website. Councillors should not use social media to criticise the councillor's decision, even if they voted against it. This is because a councillor's own personal opinion is not paramount in the collective decision-making process of a local council. I think this is a profoundly anti-democratic sentiment. I think it's not just that councillors should be able to criticise a decision made by the council. They are practically morally obliged to if they think something needs calling out. There's also this second bit is a councillor's own personal opinion is not paramount in the collective decision-making process of a local council. That is a complete non sequitur. The fact that you've taken part in a decision-making process doesn't mean you're bound by it. You should still be able to and should still call out mistakes when they've happened. I question the extent to which it is a collective decision-making process just because you're all on the same body. I would add that I think that this is really problematic in terms of the Nolan principles on public life around accountability, honesty, and openness. I also think this is probably quite problematic in terms of Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which does protect freedom of speech. I can't remember the details off the top of my head, but there is also enhanced protection of freedom of speech when it's political. So end of rant, but I saw that and I was really quite disappointed.
I agree. Go on, Martin. You go first.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I agree as well. And there's a couple of other things in there that I sort of challenge a little bit as well. But this notion that you go in, take part in a debate, a decision is made, and even if you disagree with it, you can't talk about it outside the council. I think is it's ludicrous being blunt about it. But there's other stuff in there it's talking about although decisions and formal discussions can only take place in a reasoned way at a correctly convened council meeting, there's nothing to stop councils having informal conversation and exchanging ideas in Teams or on Zoom. The clerk or an officer with delegation should be party to such discussions. And this notion that the only way you can have a conversation with your fellow councillors is, on Zoom or Teams or whatever, is with having an officer there is daft as well. I think if you're making decisions or you're at formal meetings and stuff like that, yes, of course. But councillors are always going to discuss things informally. Based on what that says, you can't go and meet up with fellow councillors in the pub and have a chat about business.
Or have an award-winning early morning podcast where we just talk about anything. We have to be free to disagree, don't we? And on the first point as well, I mean, sitting on the cabinet at HDC when you've got 52 councillors, 9 of us sit on the cabinet, which is the case with many second and third tier authorities. Yeah. Actually, it's 9 of us making the decision. Lots of the backbenchers in our own side should be free to criticise what we do. That's what scrutiny is about, isn't it? I think the whole of government, the whole of politics, and the whole of life works better if we embrace scrutiny from all sides. Yeah, because it makes us make better decisions, and so this is meaningless.
But those discussions inside and outside council chambers, and this is. I think it's really important is where you get disagreements, where those disagreements rub against each other. That's where new ideas and new thinking comes from. And the idea that, you need to control and manage that is daft. It just does not make sense. I think NALC should revisit this, to be honest. And
I wonder what the LJ would have to say about this, because I think the LJ would have a much more pragmatic view about what it's really like to be a councillor. Who is NALC run by? Is it a clerk? What is National Association of what?
local councils. It's parish and town councils, so it's not affecting districts and counties and so on. But it is. I mean, the chair of NALC just at the start of the thing is a councillor and so on. I mean, I think there is a real issue here. You don't want to be going and slagging everybody off on social media. You want to be reasoned about it. You can get into silly arguments on Facebook that don't look good. You can accidentally use a swear word at sort of 7:45 in the morning on a show with the mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. There is I think an issue though, particularly with the decline of local media, that there is very little coverage of what's going on in councils, and this is this is a problem that if councillors aren't saying, actually, hang on, I think there's a problem here, people aren't going to find out, and the problem is going to continue. Yeah. I was very disappointed to see it, and we will. I don't know. I very much hope that NALC will reconsider it. And it's slightly worrying that they would even say it. It's not good.
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes struggle about, certainly at some of the smaller parish councils that I see, some of the quality of the debate that goes on, and actually some of the advice and guidance actually from outside as well. But even that, you need to be able to talk about outside, and I struggle with it, to be honest. Just as a great example, you go into a parish council and a decision is made that you disagree with, and that there's an element of the parish council maybe making a strong decision against public opinion based on sort of extra knowledge and everything else. Great, but you go into a pub afterwards. And you disagree with that decision, and somebody says to you, "What do you think of this? Isn't it rubbish? Blah blah blah." What you're supposed to do? You're supposed to sit there and go, "The council agreed. I've got nothing to say." It stifles democracy, basically.
Yeah. And just to make the point, I mean, I think this counts as social media. I have criticised Huntingdon Town Council that I'm on because I think it put the precept up too much. And I'll continue to do so. I don't particularly want to be a test case for an Article 10.
There's a flip side to that argument, though, David, and this is what's important. As somebody that sits and watches Huntingdon Town Council from the outside, it's a good example of a town council. So that's the flip side. It does a lot. It's ambitious for its town. And the precept is part of
that. Yes, I mean it does. I think there are issues though in the town council. It is doing a lot. I think there's a possibility we're trying to do too much. I think there's still issues around the sort of financial situation of the crematorium, which concern me. We put up the precept. So as I recall, I can't remember the numbers exactly off the top of my head. The original sort of ask that came for the precept was an increase of, I think, 15% and a deficit of £500,000. Now we reduced that to an increase of 9% or 9 point something percent and a deficit of 300k. But we had yes, it is doing things, but when you're looking at double figure increases in the precept year on year, that's an issue. Of the 10, there's about 10,000 town and parish councils. For 23-24, we had the 76th highest precept, Band D levy. And I suppose I have concerns about some of it is, are we spending money on things that I would like? And I get that's a political discussion, but also, are we spending it in the best way? And are we actually making sure that we're not going to be bit in the posterior in a few years?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things you've got to well, that's one of the reasons why you need to be able to have a debate outside the council, isn't it? You know, those things, because you need to glean and get public opinion on it. And it's, I think that's right. The reality of all of it is, you know, running a £300,000 deficit, and this is true of any council, you know, it's not something that's sustainable. So you've got to find a way out of that somehow. But yes. Yeah.
Talking about things that are not sustainable, it's an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted and I need more tea.
Right. Well, take care, everyone. Good luck with your respective campaigns. I'm going to go and have another coffee. And we will see. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you all next week to talk about coffee, buses, and politics. Oh, before we go, favourite bus route of the week. I'm going for the B because it's the only one I've taken. Stephen, favourite bus this week?
I've been busy writing pamphlets, mate. I've not been anywhere near a bus.
The last bus I went on was 3133 from Whittlesea to Peterborough, so I'll take that one.
All right, brilliant. Okay, see everybody soon. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.